So you've heard, for those of you who were here in the previous session, you've heard the results of what we'll talk to you about now. I'm Blanchette, the Dean of the Faculty of Continuing Education at the University of Montreal. I'm with
Yves, Tousignant, the Faculty Secretary of the Faculty of Continuing Education.
Yves is a secretary, faculty secretary. You need to speak in the mic.
Yeah, well, this one works, okay.
Okay. Basically what we want to tell you is the story of prior learning assessment at the University of Montreal. And we'll focus on the last few years on how we brought the change to be that we could open a service for prior learning assessment at the university. So we'll try to show you some of the strategy and key, what I call inflection points that enable the change to happen. In essence, you have here part of our statement. The notion of prior learning assessments in a university, a number of universities now have those policies. The key challenges we all have is to bring them to be full-fledged services. So we have a presentation that has four large segments. One is to think about the university. I always think of what are the universities. For me, I've been in the university business for the past 25 years and always in roles that are transformative, trying to change the culture, and I can only think of developing strategies that are based on the culture of the organizations. So first and foremost, we'll talk about universities, then we'll talk about the history, what are research-intensive universities, the history of what we've done at the University of Montreal, why did it start in actually not 1978, but really 1977, and took so long to get from my high school years to my university administrative years. Then we'll talk about the various actors in the university and their points of view, which are quite different and forces one to engage in a conversation that's quite different depending to whom you speak. And then we'll talk about the narrative we've used to transform a university culture that was rather close to the idea of prior learning assessment in a formal way to one that's more open now. You can see what the University of Montreal is. You all know the name, but we don't necessarily know what the organization is. And one thing I want to make clear is that we'll be very candid about the organizations. I think that if we look at the culture of an organization, we need to be very, very candid at how we describe it and to also not shy away from controversy in doing so. And so the University of Montreal, large urban university, which faculty of medicine, it has an impact. The data that I showed there are really the data that universities like mine uses to describe themselves. Largest, biggest, first, that's part of the culture. Ranked third in Canada for research, and in my university we'll mention, oh, we're in front of McGill now. That's also one of the elements. In terms of international ranking, we look at them. They're important for us because we are very active internationally, member of U15, and it has a big paradox. It's a Faculty of Continuing Education, which is very, very large. Now, if we were to describe all of the faculties that we have there, you'll see that there are a lot of professional schools that are present in our university. About 60% of the programs are professional programs. So it brings also, that's a tool to bring about change. We have affiliated school, a school of business, HEC, and Montreal Polytechnic as an engineering school. which are now part of the University of Montreal in our international ranking submissions. And at the same time, the big paradox is the Faculty of Continuing Education. So I showed that, University of Montreal proper is 45,000 students, and 15,000 of those students are in the faculty. Whoops,
Yeah, well, you were gone. So the faculty is, you've got to understand that we are the only faculty that offers only undergraduate programs. All other faculties will have graduate programs. We still aren't there, but if he has everything like he wants to have, that we'll be going graduate in, I don't know, a year, 2 years, sometime. We have 26 programs, certificate programs. I'm not the micro programs I'm not talking about. We offer those programs in 5 main areas: communication, intervention and social sciences, health, language, and management. Like Christian was saying, we were created as a faculty in 1974, but the Service de l'Éducation Permanente, Continuing Education Service, existed before that since the start of the 1960s. We've got 15,000 active students, active meaning students that have been admitted in one of our programs and are actually following courses. So that's close to a quarter of all the undergraduate students of the university. A third of our students are full-time students, so you can do the math, 2/3 are part-time students. The mean age is almost 33 years old. 80% are women, and 70% of our students are currently also at work, so they have a job. Their main job is not being a student. It's something else.
So we have a lot of people coming back to universities, either because they are immigrants, a third of our students are immigrants, or because they want to upgrade their credentials. Now, in a research-intensive university, research-intensive universities, and that, when we talk about the U15, it's the UBCs, the University of Alberta, University of Toronto, University of Ottawa. We can name a number of them. Usually, they have Faculty of Medicine, except the University of Waterloo, which are part of the U15. They all think of themselves in the similar fashion. They think they are, and we are, the highest quality university. I tell you, I'll be candid here, that there is a perception that we are rigorous universities, that we are first-tier universities, and that universities are based on reputation. That's how we basically build. Those who are in mainly undergraduate institutions want to do more research and so on and so forth. And those in the first tier look at Harvard, Cambridge, and the rest. So we all look up somewhere. So the notion of dilution of the brand is absolutely a key element to keep in mind when we think about prior learning assessment and recognitions. And actually, if we look at what the main views in universities is of PLAR, you have a number of statements here that qualifies this. And I can tell you they are really part of the culture here. So informal learning, formal learning. So informal learning is not learning, formal is good. If not learned formally, probably not learned. If not taught by us, probably not as good. Informal learning is not quality learning, and if we did not teach it, it has not been learned. That's really, the traditional university. You're all laughing, but you all know that. That's part of the culture of what universities is. Now, really, if we look at establishing a prior learning assessment service within a university, there are elements within the organizations or arguments that will emerge. One is it might be a danger to our reputation. Isn't this selling our degrees? If we did not teach it, it's not been learned. Will we lose revenues? And in times of cuts, that's a key element. This is done in lesser universities. That's also some of the ideas that people have. And then comes the notion of, can this be done rigorously? Is this, and obviously all of the issue around academic oversight is very, very important. And in university, what it means is me as professor, will I have my say in recognizing that my course is already, the content of my course, the competency to be developed in my course, that they've been already learned by someone who has not taken my course. That's what one should read. And it has its inflection with faculty members, and it also has its inflections with deans and program directors. So looking at these, when we started the project, or when I arrived 3.5 years ago at the faculty, and I looked at this and said, we need to do this. I established key principles by which we needed to abide in order to actually respect the culture of the organization. Because I'm convinced that, as I mentioned, that we can't change the culture really. We need to use the culture to bring change about. And that way I said to the team, Yves being there at the time and having the mandate to put that in place, that we needed to have a process that would basically based on objectivity. So people looking at it and critiquing it would be able to say all kinds of things, but not that it's not objective, not that it's not rigorous. And the notion that it had to be fair, and part of the questions, the discussions in the previous presentations dealt around that the requirement for students to have their knowledge recognized and their competencies recognized through PLR should not be at a higher standard than those in the classroom. Mind you, it's a different kind of work. It requires work to do it, and the fact that it requires work implies, and people perceive that it implies that it's rigorous and has brought in a certain base of objectivity. Now, let's look at what the faculty of continuing education, what we think of PLR within the faculty and how we implemented it. Yves?
Yeah, that's my cue. So we believe, and we firmly believe, that informal learning, non-formal learning are through ways of learning. Students should not have to submit to courses on topics that they already know. Redundancy does not mean you understand better. Formal assessment is needed. As it was said just a few minutes ago, there has been a tendency to consider, I don't know, formal, not formal, but recognition of former learning experience, excuse me, in a way that was more impressionistic, and we want it to be very objective. Well, as we said, candidates should not be expected to know more, but not less either. And what is extremely important for our faculty is that graduation rates, perseverance, is a lot more important than eventual financial losses. For us, it is important that a student, a candidate, will be offered a chance to complete his certificate and eventually his degree.
You can imagine I didn't say that first.
So the way we work is that notwithstanding what was presented just beforehand, by our friends Magali and Jean-Pierre, we try to validate general course objectives. So we use the courses plans to extract what should be taught to the students, knowing very well that each teacher, chargé de cours, professor, has a tendency to mold his course in the way he prefers. We try to use the objectives before they have been molded too much. The thing being that two teachers might teach the same course in two different ways, but students would learn more or less the same, would attain the same objectives at the end. So what we try to do when we do PLAR is validate the objectives that are supposed to be attained at the end. And what we are working towards is validation of general objectives of themes. When one of our programs has a different options, as was said before, it is impossible to think that we can offer all of the possible courses, but those options suppose specific objectives of the program, and that's what we will try to evaluate so that it's not courses per se that will be exempted, but parts of the program that will be exempted, credits as it is. I don't know, is there somebody that was not there beforehand? Because this is essentially a very general repeat of what was said the first presentation. What happens is that a student can self-assess if he is a good candidate. We received a request. We give him a full toolkit so that he can start working on his portfolio. The portfolio is constituted with the comparative analysis table. Everything that has been received and validated by our friends is put to an expert, whether it's an internal or external expert. We are going towards the possibility for students to literally ask to be submitted to a challenge examination, whether it be some kind of I don't know, special work, analysis, questionnaire, whatever. And then at the end, there's a decision whether it's accepted, rejected, or what could be said as the middle ground. So in the type of, we do not believe you master sufficiently the objectives, but the course for which you tried to get your exemption, for which you were evaluated, you should not submit to it as it is. There might be a better course for you that would permit to complete what is missing from the first course and yet also permit you to learn something more.
So that's the process that we've embedded in our policy. Now, what I would like to get you through is a process of the various views from the community, and I won't read what's there, but what you'll see is a number of slides go through, and as you see, you have all of the actors around the issue of a change of that nature, people that were met, with whom we discussed, people we needed to convince that the project was a viable project. It goes from student union, deans and faculty members from other faculties, the team in the faculty, our president, vice president academic, vice president planning, vice president finances, registrar, the overall administrative team at the university. So all of them have different points of view. And if you look at the student union, the student union has been a champion of PLAR at the university since they've been created. We have a student union in our faculty with 15,000 students. It's highly efficient. And their points of view is really to help adult learners. So it's not about the 18-24 studying during the day. It's really about part-time learners that are adults that manages and balance work life, family life, and study life. So their points of view is quite different than our day student union. Now, they were convinced, they pushed for it, and actually they created a development fund for it. So when I arrived, it was a gift. There was a development fund there that I could work with to enable to develop the project. Now, if we look, so within the faculty, as Yves mentioned, already we were committed to this. And already we had strong views. The faculty had been a champion of it, and Yves will talk to you about some of the steps that took place over the past 30 years on the topic, and you'll see that the faculty had been quite active, but never been able to break the barriers of getting a policy in place and moving things up to Senate. Now, if you look at the president, presidents of universities are a strange breed. They tend to look often forward, and they meet all kinds of people, and sometimes their points of view is quite forward-looking. And the challenge is often to bring about change within the organization. So if they have a good team behind them that are convinced of that change, they can bring that forefront. And in the actual context of universities, our president is convinced that atypical students will be the future of most universities. And in our university already, atypical students are the present of our university, with 25% of them being in our faculty, and in some of them in other faculties as well. So clearly, the idea really was to move forward in that, always keeping in mind that the reputation of the organization is everybody's goal. Now, the vice president academic has a mandate to help, and he helped everybody. The management team, the academic management team, were really convinced about this. They expected rigor in this, and also it's always managing the prerogatives of the deans. That's a key element. So we chose a model that enabled that. When I arrived, there were words of developing a university policy on prior learning assessment, and then came the student strike, and the same people were leading the initiatives on prior learning assessment policy, university policy, and were dealing with the strike, so they put the policy aside, and we agreed that we would be moving at a large speed on the project at the faculty. So that's why what we're talking about is a faculty policy, not a university policy, which will come after a few years of us operating the service. Now, obviously, VP planning, it's about, they valued retention and graduation rate, certainly, but the cost and the losses that comes from prior learning assessment is important. And also all of the issues, financial issues related to break-even points are important. Same kind of issues, very important to the finance people at the university. But a key element, and I'm coming back here, when I say that retention rate and graduation rates were key elements, they were key arguments for these people too. So it is worth mentioning that. The registrar was all about, obviously, you know, how you track this, how you recognize this, and how you put this in the system. And I have to say that we were also very aggressive on this issue, because we didn't want to have a system of prior learning assessment that could be managed only on a table with a piece of paper. We needed this to be built within the university student management system, and that's the kind of work we've done with them. And we should be completed with that in December. And for the administrative teams, our administrative teams, the key elements was really to automate everything. So to bring that in the financial system at the university so that all of the processes in place to track bad debts, to manage people who would remove themselves from the programs, and all of these were in place, and we could actually make this effectively a process that would be similar to any other process within our administrative system. And for deans and faculty members, the question of selling degrees was there. And obviously the last bit was the key element, the middle bit. Will it apply to my faculty? If not, it's okay. But it's okay actually means something very interesting, because it means it's fine that our university has a prior learning assessment process that's formally recognized within the Senate, and that's actually a big change. So we were able, by going this route and saying it's applied to our faculty, even the courses that we share with some of the deans, we kind of said won't apply to them, will apply to my courses, not yours. Now what was very, very interesting is when we moved through Senate, and we arrived at Senate for the vote, everybody was in favor, everybody was saying, we're doing it, we're doing it, we're doing it. It really gained momentum. And it gained momentum because we actually met almost everybody that needed to be met within that process. So the narrative, the story, Yves is the historian. He's been there for way longer than I've been, so I'll let him talk about it.
Could you just, not the next, in two slides, we have a small timeline, so it's going to be easier. Yeah, that one, please. I'll leave you the other one. So, what can be found is that the first official mention of PLAR can be found in the 1977 version of the academic regulations. That is not to say that there was no recognition before that time. It is the first time where it is written in university code that exemptions recognition of courses or credits based on experience, based on anything else than you have studied the same course in another university was possible. It was an informal procedure. There was a first faculty project in 1986. As was said beforehand, the faculty became a faculty in 1975, so it took 11 years before there was sufficient momentum to cause our internal council to say, yeah, we've got to think about it. There was some pressure from the student union at that time, let's be candid. Unfortunately, those first attempts were ill-fated, just didn't come to anything. The student union in 1991 had its biannual congress that was essentially the only thing of importance being discussed at that time was PLAR, and that almost gave a second momentum, but that truly congealed in a second faculty report and pilot project in 1995, which was applied to only 2 of the programs with, let's say, maybe strictures or a way of working that was so complicated that students just weren't interested in trying to have their experience recognized, so that was also ill-fated. Outside from us, in the year 2000, the Conseil supérieur de l'éducation urged universities to adopt formal politics regarding PLAR. A third faculty model for PLAR was started, let's say, comedy was started in 2003. A report was given in 2004, and we can see traces of it. It should have been deposed at the faculty council, but from each reunion to each reunion, it was just backlisted, 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 and then never appeared again. In 2007, the university finally, finally, why not, instituted a committee on PLAR that eventually led to the first draft of the policy that Christian mentioned. And what was a great idea, I saw that first draft, it was really neat, eventually could not be pushed more as it happened at the same time as the strike. So we had an ad hoc committee on continuing education that looked at what was continuing education at the University of Montreal and our faculty, and one of its conclusions was also that PLAR should be put forward. In November 2012, Christian put together our PLAR team as it is now with Magali and Jean-Pierre. The fourth and what was to become the final model for the faculty for a practical approach to PLAR was deposed in 2012. We had our pilot project in 2013. The faculty policy was adopted by the University Senate in 2013, and our service officially opened in 2014. A small thing that might explain one of the questions that was asked at the other presentation. The pilot project, there was absolutely no fee asked from students, whereas the actual service, there is a fee. So in this, let's say that when you pay for something, you might have a tendency to try and go all the way and finish that something. So that might be part of the explanation why out of 65 dossiers that were deposed during 2013, only 12 or 13 went all the way to evaluation. It didn't cost anything, so I'm not losing anything but my time. Whereas now, since it costs something, I want a return. We expect more people to go all the way to evaluation. The next slide is yours.
And one thing, if you were the PLR team that we put together, if you see here in 2011, there were what I deem and we call the Barrett reports, which was really done by someone who had great insight in PLAR, but no sense of operational requirements for such a thing. So when I put together the PLAR team, I was looking for something very different than an academic to lead the project. So I was looking for two people who had experience with PLAR. We hired Jean-Pierre Lefebvre, who was in school boards and had been doing PLAR for 10 years almost. Magali Marceau, who was in French universities doing similar kind of work. So we brought together people who actually had more of an operational mindset than others. And the pilot project's role was to actually fine-tune the process. Now, we won't go into the details, but of all of the meetings, and I put them there. When you do these kinds of things, you need to have a good sense of humor and even a sense of derision, because I have to say that at one point, my line after coming out of a meeting is, oh, I will know the next committee I'll need to meet during the meeting today. And at the end, I had another committee I needed to meet, and I had another committee to meet, and it took a little while. to do that. And all this at the same time, I would ask the team to rejig what they had prepared for me to meet when I met the VP academic, and it was a different presentation for the VP planning, and it was a different presentation for the VP finance, because they had different interests and questions. So here's what we'll go through very rapidly the narrative that we've used, basically. And it's the core of the presentations that I've used when we brought all of the VPs in a room and we said, okay, now let's go through it and you'll ask all of the questions you want.
So PLAR in our faculty, what we told the university is that we will be recognizing and validating learning and competencies acquired and constructed in formal or non-formal settings. What that means, and everybody here knows it, is we do not recognize work experience per se. We validate the learning that was acquired through that experience. And that is a very important statement to give to the university, since the fear is always that if somebody arrives with 15 years experience in this domain, will you give him 3 credits, 6 credits, or 9 credits? The answer is, we will give him the credits that are equal to what he has learned in these 5, 10, or 15 years. So in 5 years, a fast learner, let's say, could have learned so many things that he can account easily for 3 courses, but somebody else in 15 years sometimes will not have learned much and could not receive any credits. Our mission is to offer, we said it, but it's to offer relevant programs to professionals and working adults who wish to return to our university or to start university on a part-time basis. That implies that all our courses, all our programs, and our services, and PLAR is one of our important services at this time, are there to facilitate their coming back to the university, and not only coming back, it's not a free ride, but if we can help them in a rigorous and objective manner to get their certificate, get their diploma, their degree, let's say faster, PLAR is faster, well then everything, we're happy about that, but we will not sacrifice quality.
And that was part of the grand vision that I presented, to say, if our mission is about helping people come back to university or come to university for the first time, for whatever reasons, we have a number of services that we offer. Our admission criteria are based on work and life experience. We've created a program for those who do not have the prerequisite for university called ACCEFEP, which is actually a way to build those competencies of being a student in a university. We have a well-established credit and diploma framework with other universities. One thing for those of you who are not from Quebec, there is a structure of bachelor's degree which actually enable one to do 10 course certificates and to stack them into bachelor's degree. So their process of recognizing certificates from other universities is well established. We have an individualized study certificate which enable us to recognize 5 courses, whatever they are, and you have a concentration in that certificate on a disciplinary topic for 5 courses. We have on the table, we said we need to be able to do more of that credit recognitions. So we're working on a major in individualized studies which will enable us to recognize 10 courses for someone who's done a little bit of university and dropped out. So the idea is if you cannot have a minor in the university where you were, for those courses, we would be able to integrate those within a major, which leads you to get a bachelor's degree in one less year than the 3 years that are required. It should go to our faculty council this month. Then the prior learning assessments and recognition piece, what I've described here, the bachelor's degree, and we're working on a specialized bachelor's degree through a combination of university certificates, specialized because it's bringing together a number of those certificates that have actually a critical mass of learning within a certain discipline. And that's also coming to our faculty council this month. So with all of these in place, and PLAR is one of those elements, we launch into a very aggressive recruitment campaign for those who are actually dropping out of university. In Quebec, 27% of students drop out from university every year. So the focus here in the faculty is, since our mission is about bringing people back to university, we're giving ourselves the tools so that we can speed up the study that these people have done and validate what they have already learned, whether formally or through PLAR in their experience.
So why did we go the PLAR way? Christian has said it, but what you must also see, and you might know it because some of these conclusions have already been presented at other times at this forum, is that PLAR helps degree completion. Proportionally, more students who have undergone successful PLAR will get their diploma than students who have not had successful PLAR or no PLAR at all. PLAR in that way helps perseverance. If you get more people that graduate, that means that more people have stayed at school and have gone through all the process. PLAR is also a recruitment tool. Some studies have shown that with a good PLAR offer, as much as 5% more people will be interested in admission in your programs. What is not written on this slide, but that I find interesting, is it has also been shown that PLAR students in general have better academic grades or results than non-PLAR students. I have not read through all of those studies, so I cannot say do they have better grades because their work experience makes it so that all their courses are easier to take and understand, or is it simply that with PLAR having less courses to do, they have more time for their studies? That is something that might be interesting to see, but not in my, it's not my work at this time. What we do at FEP is we give course exemptions. That is to differentiate from course equivalencies in our parlance, where courses are deemed equivalent when a course that has been followed, that has been taken at one university, is judged to be the same as a course from our university. So equivalence means undergraduate courses are equivalent to other undergraduate courses. Graduate courses can be equivalent to graduate courses. But if you go the way of recognizing experience, or if you go the way of recognizing courses from other levels of teaching, you go the way of exemptions at University of Montreal. Terms might be different in other universities, but usually in Quebec, when you look at the regulations of the different universities, you can see the differences. So a student that goes the way of PLAR from experience will get an exemption, but also you can get exemptions from, let's say, in Quebec you have two-year college that is university, has the goal of university, and three-year colleges that are more technical. But what can happen is that based on the sum of all of your collegial studies, you can get exemptions for some courses, but never will we say that that collegial course is equivalent to that university course. That the sum of what you learned in your 3 years of college may open the way for exemptions. And contrary-wise, if somebody comes with, I've got 3 courses done on master's level, can I use them in my certificate? Well, it's going to be an exemption. Never will the university say that master's courses are equivalent to undergraduate courses. So that's the way we're going for that.
So part of the story is really to say to the people who needed to make decisions, show them the risk, the potential, and that's the kind of work we've done in terms of looking at potential of students in our faculties that could engage in prior learning assessments. In terms of risk management, one of the key elements that people mention is, okay, will we lose funding from the credits? Because if we recognize the credits, basically we won't get the funding. And people really overestimate the funding that's lost. Because usually you don't lose funding in the first year the students come in. You're losing the funding at the end of the process. So year 1 in program, there's no loss of revenues. You've actually attracted the person to come in. So no loss of revenues. And the potential loss of revenues that you get are for those who would actually have graduated from your program and not have taken those courses. But research, at least one PhD thesis telling us that it is an attractor to our faculty, to a faculty program that offers it, that we figure that it's probably canceling out. We've done a number of analysis in terms of impact, financial impact and all, and that's, depending on your province you are, you have the different kind of variables that one will use. What is key for us is that even half of the increase in registrations would actually cancel the potential loss that we would find. So that was a key element of the convincing people to go and approve the scheme. So where we stand now in the next step, listen, we've opened the formal program in January 2014, a little bit more than a year after we started the work with the new team. Now we are finishing to integrate PLAR in our student management system. As Yves mentioned, we're looking at global recognitions of learning, and in a sense that's about recognizing learning in blocks of courses. In programs we've got the core courses and different blocks that have different meaning, specialized breadth, depth, and so on and so forth, being able to recognize in those blocks a number of credits. And we are now in full swing of an adoption strategy whereby Magali and Jean-Pierre, our 2 leaders for the projects, are actually visiting classrooms and programs to make it known to students. We are using PLAR as a recruitment scheme. We're not the first university formally to do PLAR in Quebec, far from that, but we're the first one really to use it as a recruitment strategy. It's in our publicity, left and right, you can get recognized. And the strategy of come back to school is also something that we're preparing for next spring. So in conclusions, what was learned, basically a certain number of principles, and I was looking at them right before coming to stage and suddenly thinking, geez, this is just a basic course on change management. Really, if you look at the various pieces, clear principles in line with the organization value, Thorough landscape analysis. We've looked at what everybody was doing in Canada and Quebec and a number of people in France. The structure of what they did, prior learning assessments, what they charge, and all of that. We involved everyone in the conversations, one-on-one. I've met every dean who might not like the idea for whatever reasons. That made a lot of lunches and a lot of running to burn all of those calories. Also, you know, most committees that I could attend, I presented. Each audience, own views, own language, adapt to the audience. The balance approach, I think, was a key. You know, typically, the effectiveness is a central service, and we're trying to put something in place that's closer to our program than university central service, because that dialogue is so important in finding the experts and also building understanding. I recall that people at Sherbrooke were telling us that, you know, they've been doing this for 3 years without really much publicity, and they were telling us that really referral came from faculty members. So our process of being close to the faculties, to the part-time faculties and our program manager is really to ensure that they're in par with this so that they become the voice of prior learning assessments within our faculty. And all through that, we kept a high pace for this because, you know, from the moment we started officially, our team started to work on this, a year later we had the policy through Senate. So it was fast, it was smooth, but it took a lot of time, and for me, September, October, to really shake everybody's hands and convince them that that was the way to go. So that's the story from 1978 to 2014, and further, I will come back to tell you where it's going now. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you have any stories to tell or questions to ask. It's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult to pinpoint specifically. We do every year a survey of our student populations and ask all kinds of questions and motivations questions and so on and so forth. And the issue of, you know, what brought you here, we've included now prior learning assessment to see if there's an impact. Want us to see that as we were doing this, we were doing 5 or 6 other major things, transforming all of our programs. Will be done in 2015, or all of our programs will have been evaluated and modified very significantly. We've changed completely the brand of the faculty and pushed a different strategy for recruitment, so that over the past 2 years, we've grown by more than 15%. So prior learning assessment we've been using for, you know, the past 8 months in recruitment. I doubt that it's just that's led to an increase of 8.5% this year. But how much has it contributed? Probably it has something about the story. It tells something about the story of the faculty for the people who are looking at it, certainly.
If I may complete. What should be easier to validate is the fact that does PLAR truly at our faculty augment graduation or getting your diploma? That will be easier because it will be some legwork maybe, but to differentiate students that have received positive PLAR and have obtained their diploma versus students that never asked for PLAR and have obtained a diploma or not, see if the proportions are more or less equal, or is it true also for our faculty that having positive PLAR helps graduating. That will be easier to assess, but it will not be possible in 1 year or 3 years. I mean, we've had, like Jean-Pierre said, 12 positive cases, dossiers that were evaluated last year. We've got 45 in the process of being evaluated this year. So we'll have to wait to have a sufficient body of evidence, if I may say so, to really be able to answer that question.
Our outlook is 3 years. We want to, in 3 years, have something well established that is recognized in the population as something they can do at the University of Montreal. Yes? Yeah. Exemption. Exemption, yeah. Yeah, there are a number of things still that we need to do, and even within our university. So our academic regulations says that any equivalencies or exemptions given in a faculty in a given program does not transfer to another faculty. You need to ask again. Now, all of this depends on the respect one has from one another, or actually the local academic will need to make the decisions. Sometimes it's not, you know, you've got good ones, you've got bad ones. And now we're starting to work with those who have mirror programs with us. We have 5 programs that are also present in other faculties to go and explain the process by which we're going through. So that notion of rigor is important there, so that they can say, we have long-lasting relationship with them, so they kind of go, oh yeah, that makes sense what they're doing. Now, what we also have learned is that people from other faculties are asking, you know, can you do this for us? And at this stage, we've said no. And some of the changes that will come back is, in a sense, prior learning assessment is done in universities daily. You know, even without a policy, even without, you know, faculty policy or university policy. It brought other faculties to actually look at it formally, and starting to work and thinking of how can we actually make it official that we're doing this so that we can attract students. Our faculty School of Pharmacy is now going through that process. Our School of Nursing has done PLAR for a number of years without calling it that. And now they're looking at doing a formal policy. So in a sense, coming with the faculty policies, that we are seeing a number of other policies that might emerge and will make it way easier to have a university policy. So it's transformative in a sense. Yes? So the question is, where will the School of Pharmacy at the University of Montreal do PLAR? They just moved from a bachelor's degree in pharmacy to a PharmD, doctorate in pharmacy. And they're looking at PLAR for those pharmacists who have the bachelor's degree, have been in practice for a number of years, and they want to get the PharmD. So that's where they are actually building a certain bit of creating a process so as to ease that transition. The challenge is not as large as ours because we're working in a very multidisciplinary environment. So we've got programs that are labeled medicine, and we have programs that are labeled, you know, fine arts. For them, it's very simple. It's, for us, our points of view, not theirs. It's very simple. It's one single program. Therefore, there's probably a link they can make about, you know, the number of years of experience at that level, running your own pharmacy, doing this, doing that, that they can create links with formal learning. Our team, Jean-Pierre already met them to explain how we were doing this, and so it's less. It's going to be way simpler, I think, for them to do it than for us. Other questions? Yes. Oui. One of the when I showed, you know, the various points of view, the points of view of deans saying, you know, is it applying to me? If not, oh, I'm fine with it. Part of the story is to say to colleagues, we'll never do this in your faculty on our own. But if you ask, we'll be glad to help. And that's why, you know, we had conversations with the School of Nursing. That's why the School of Pharmacy came in. So for us, we're actually, with the team, we've built formal knowledge and expertise within the organization. No, they have not yet come to ask. Usually Faculty of Medicine, and all of those programs are in the Faculty of Medicine, they have the means to hire expertise to do these things, but we haven't had conversations with them. Oh, for sure, for sure. That's part of the role that we can play in bringing to the university changes that enables it to deal and service better the adult learners. First, we need to change the university charter, because in the charter we'll label as an undergraduate faculty. That's part of that's the big project for this year. So one a year. To be able to, and I have agreement with the leadership of the university to move in that direction, so I think it's essential. Now we're at the level of preparing the documents for our various committees, and remember this, I'm planning another one. Thank you. So thank you very much for your time and your questions. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to talk either to Yves or myself. Thank you.
Thank you.